Welcome to Umesh Shah Presents Sunday Life and Learn Talks. Our speaker today is a TEDx Mosley speaker and a mindfulness teacher. She is dedicated to spreading mindfulness to manage mental health, build confidence, and understand self-care. Very warm welcome to Alima Nur Muhammad, who will be talking about mindfulness and self-compassion. She will be talking about what is mindfulness and self-compassion, mindfulness and impact on our life, why mindfulness and self-compassion, and how to bring mindfulness and self-compassion into our lives. Without taking more time, Alima, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Umesh. Welcome, everybody. I'm very, very excited to be here and to share something I'm very passionate about with everyone. So before we start anything, I want us to just ground ourselves. And by grounding, it's literally to allow ourselves to just fall right here into the present moment. Sometimes I know when you get into these webinars, there's so much else that is happening at the same time, and you are distracted. So before I start anything, I always invite people to just ground themselves. And I want to do that by asking you to notice maybe 5 things around you. So if you're busy doing something else, give yourself permission to just let go of everything and just focus on noticing 5 things that you may never have noticed before. I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. Something new, maybe it's a color, maybe it's a texture, maybe there's an item in front of you that you're like, oh, I actually never noticed that before, or there's a mark on the wall that you've never seen before. As you're doing this, the next thing I want you to notice is 4 things that you can hear. So other than my voice, and I'm going to keep quiet just for the next few seconds, notice if you can hear anything else that, again, you may never have paid attention to before. It might even be the sound of your own breath. Great. Now I want you to notice 3 things that you're feeling. So it could be the texture of your clothing on you. It could be the ground beneath your feet. It could be anything, maybe your back against the chair. Again, noticing something you've never noticed before. Wonderful. And the next thing I want you to notice is smells that are around you. Just 2 new smells, or 2 smells that you've, again, never noticed before. You might not even smell anything, but let's just pay attention to any interesting smells. And then the last thing I want you to notice is the taste in your mouth. Could be the taste of the last thing you ate or drank. Some of you might be fasting. You may have just broken fast, or maybe you haven't broken fast. So maybe there's not even anything that you're tasting in your mouth. Even that I want you to notice. Good. I hope that exercise was interesting, weird, maybe fun for a few of you. Drop in the chat whatever your comments were. The whole point of that exercise was to bring you into this present moment and bring complete awareness here. When I asked you to focus maybe on the things you've never noticed before, you might have just looked around and were not thinking about anything else, but just bringing in front of you whatever it is that you hadn't noticed before, because that was your directive. So I'm going to get into the idea of this exercise as I further get into my talk. And I want to share with you a little bit about my own story and how I came to what I'm doing now. So I used to work in the hospitality many years ago, and then I moved from hospitality into media, but the whole time something was always nagging at me. It took me about 4 years ago is when I quit, And I've been on a personal growth journey ever since. I started my journey as a life coach, and I started to study how the mind works. But my biggest growth journey actually started when I discovered the practice of mindfulness, which came to me after the loss of my dad, which was 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, my baby was about 4 months old, and dad left us in a tragic accident, and this was headline news around the world. Now, what happened with his loss, it literally, it affected my sanity the way I had never gone through something that deep. My dad and I were very close, and I didn't understand how I could go on pretty much living. But I knew I had a 4-month-old that I had to nurture, so I lived for her. So in my own thing, for that first year at least, I only existed. My daughter was what was keeping me alive. She was growing up. I was barely there. I was literally just going through the routine of feeding her, putting her back to sleep, taking her for a walk, and starting that every single day over and over again. What happened on the anniversary, on the first year anniversary of his death? I went to the site where he passed away, and for me personally, I fell into a place that was so peaceful. It was incredible. I had never felt that calmness ever since I lost him. It lasted a few, I don't even know how long it lasted. It's really hard to explain what I went through. But one thing I do remember deeply is that there was so much peace. And in that moment, it was silence, there was no voices in my head. And in that moment of peace, I realized that I could choose my next moment. I could choose how I wanted to move forward in my life. And I could choose whether I wanted to continue being upset and lost and just exist, or if I actually wanted to live. And that choice, when I saw it, involved a lot of self-compassion. I realized just in those few seconds of falling into this place of peace and calmness, I could literally see how I had treated myself in the last 1 year. It was all subconscious. It was all completely unaware of how I had treated myself. But from that space of peace, I was able to decide that I was going to bring in more kindness in my life. And so that's what I did. That year, that first year, like I mentioned, I wasn't focused on my relationship. I wasn't focused on my health. And all of this was very critical to what I was doing in that point in my life, which was raising a child. She should have been my priority. My whole time, again, in that 1 year was anxiety, sadness, wondering what was going to happen to my mother now that my father was gone. I was angry because I had waited so long to have a baby, and then dad just decides to leave. So there was a lot of emotions, a lot of negativity, anger. There was a complete loss of happiness. Now, why I'm bringing this story up is because that day that I mentioned to you earlier, when I fell into that space of peace, that was a turning point of my life. That episode is what helped me really, really discover mindfulness and the details and really dive into it in depth. And I became a teacher. I've actually become a teacher in mindfulness. So I teach this practice. Now, what is mindfulness? It's the ability to be in the present moment without judgment and with a lot of self-compassion. That part for me was key. A lot of self-compassion, especially when I find myself in a space of anger, in a space of unworthiness, in a space of beating myself up over not living. Because again, going back to the story when I lost dad, and in that 1 year, there was not enough income in my life. My fitness had gone. I'm a mountain climber. I couldn't climb a mountain for the life of me at that time of my life. And I was also experiencing mom guilt a lot of the time. And that would just literally take over. The doubt, the questioning, everything would take over. And I couldn't understand what to do with it. And when I started mindfulness practice, I was actually able to release everything that was holding me back in that moment. And I was able to participate in my own life. I was able to be present in my own activities. And I was able to accept. Once I started to accept, I started to notice that there was a sense of openness. I became more curious about things. And one thing led to another. And I discovered more about what self-compassion meant. So what is self-compassion? Now, what I'd like to do is, I don't want to just be talking. And what I want people to do is maybe to just drop into the chat, what do you think self-compassion is? So anybody, I'm just going to look at the chat as well, and hopefully we'll have some people just telling me, what do you think self-compassion means to you? So I'll give you a couple of seconds to answer, and we can go on. Being kind to yourself. Thank you, Rosine. Anybody else? What do you think self-compassion means? Making time for yourself? Absolutely, absolutely. Empathy, yes. Mindfulness, forgiving yourself, yes. Yes, these are amazing components of what self-compassion means. Taking care of yourself. And it's not just physically taking care of yourself. We have all been trained to, go to the gym, exercise, make sure you eat well. That's the physical aspect of our life that we're always focusing on. But what about the emotional aspect of our life? What about the mental aspect of our life? So sometimes we believe that what we are going through, especially when it comes to the mental, we believe that we are alone on this journey of making mistakes. We believe we are alone on this journey of doubting ourselves. Why is this always happening to me? We put ourselves in this victim mode, believing that this only happens to me because everybody else around me is flourishing, right? Now, when we start to realize that this doesn't only happen to me, that it's not the world against me, and that it actually happens to everybody else, that it's a human experience that we're going through. The feelings of unworthiness, the loneliness that we experience, the sense of lack that we go through. We're not alone. It may feel like we're alone in that specific moment, but these are challenges that are connecting every single human being on the planet. These are the struggles of the entire humanity. Once we can begin to realize that feeling of, my God, why is this just happening to me? That dissipates. And when that dissipates, you start to understand, you know what? People go through this, they get out of it. I can do the same. It gives you that feeling of hope. It gives you that feeling of strength. But the first thing you have to do is understand that I am connected to the rest of the world and I'm not alone in this. Now, when we become mindful of these struggles of not being alone, when we become aware that we are struggling, the magic thing about the next step is we can decide how we want to respond to them. So I'll give you an example. If you're beating yourself up, your inner critic is telling you what is wrong with you. You should have done this. What if you had done this better? I think I should, you should be resonating with all these. Instead of doing that, what if we started to talk to ourselves with a lot more kindness and a lot more compassion? The moment we start to show ourselves that compassion and that kindness, things start to change. We begin to accept and embrace our inner self and our outer self, despite what is right, despite what isn't right, despite what is not feeling right in that moment in time. But when we respond to it with kindness and compassion, this can lead to our ability to thrive. And we leave that place of being stuck. Do we all know that place where we feel stuck? If we do, put your hands up or put it in the chat and say, yes, I know what it feels like to be stuck. There we go. There we go. A lot of you have been there. A lot of you might still be there. If you find yourself there in that right now, to ask yourself, you know what? I feel stuck. What is my inner voice telling me? Why am I feeling stuck? And I can guarantee that that inner voice is probably telling you, well, you're not good enough. You've done all this, and what's your worth? You've done all this, and you're still unable to earn. You have put on weight. You're unable to lose weight, etc. That usual music that goes on. That is the voice that we want to change. because we have the power to do that. And this is why we're here. I'm going to be telling you how, I'm going to be showing you a few ways to change that. Another thing we struggle with is the fact that it's so hard. This is why we're stuck, because it's so hard to treat ourselves with more kindness, right? Now, what I want to do is, I'd like you to once again drop in the chat, excuse me, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you in a situation. Let's say you're in a situation where you've been rejected at work. Maybe you were meant to get promoted and somebody else got promoted instead. What is your reaction towards this promotion? For example, if that's not a situation you can relate yourself to, maybe think of a relationship where you felt rejected. Again, what is your reaction in that situation? Can we have you dropping some comments in the chat? How would you feel if you were rejected? Anger. Great. I have anger. What else? Sad. I would be sad. Good. Depression. Wow. Wow. What would be the voices in your head? What would the voice in your head be telling you? Failure, guilty. Yep. I'm not feeling good enough. What else? If somebody wants to say it out loud, you can put your hand up, and I think we can unmute you. Maybe Umesh, you can take a look if anybody's putting their hands up.
Sure.
Anxiety, yes. Unworthy, feeling unworthy, yes. This is what happens. Now what I want you to do is use the same scenario and think of your friend who was rejected in that situation. Think of the friend who got rejected in the relationship, or think of the friend who got rejected over the job. What would you tell her? You can do better next time, okay? What else would you tell her? Her or him, sorry. What else would you tell this friend of yours who got passed over? They gave the job to somebody else and not her. You're worth much more. Oh my God, I love that. You're telling your friend you're worth much more. You can do better next time. What else? Have patience. What else? Encourage them not to give up. Look at this, guys. Have you just seen what has happened? If it's to somebody else, try again next time. Look at the kind of treatment you're giving this person. Give positive feedback. And yet, we are unable to do that to ourselves. It's the same situation. You yourself have seen the comments that are coming into the chat. It's the perspective. It is so easy to put ourselves down. But when the situation is happening to somebody else, we have compassion for that person. And we're going to say, you know what? This wasn't for you. You were made for bigger things. Why can we not do that for ourselves? And I'll tell you why. It's because we are not mindful. We get lost in that story of I'm not good enough. When we fall into this presence of awareness, when we are mindful about our pain and we acknowledge that, you know what, I feel rejected. Great, I've acknowledged it. I've accepted it. Now I'm going to make a decision of how I'm going to feel about it. And in this case, feeling about it means changing perspective. The way you all said it in the chat, be positive. You are worthy. You're worth so much more. And that now you're going to direct it to yourself. I hope everybody is with me here. If you have questions that are coming along the way, we'll make a note and we can ask the questions at the end. If it's a burning question, you can just put your hand up and I can try and cover that. Now, the next question that people tell me, well, you know what, if I do that to me all the time, what is the difference between self-compassion and self-pity? Again, this is a question to you as the audience. What do you think is the difference between self-compassion and self-pity? Let me open the chat on my side. I like that last comment. You have no control over it. You did the best. Exactly. We do our best in that moment, and sometimes we get rejected. doesn't mean we're not good enough. Great. So self-compassion versus self-pity. What is the difference? Would love to hear from you. This is a tough one, eh? Positive versus negative. Okay, okay. What else? Anybody want to dare and try and raise your hand and say it out loud? Self-critic, putting yourself down. Okay. Oh, there's somebody with their hand up. Ruben. Yes, go ahead.
Self-pity is not judging yourself.
Self-pity is not judging yourself?
Yes.
Okay, okay. We'll take that as an answer. Anybody else? Comforting oneself with any excuse. Self-compassion is not being hard on you and improve. Self-pity is staying in it and not doing anything. Good. So self-pity is actually, we are wallowing about our situation. We're taking that complex that we call the poor me complex, and it is being done from a place of unknown. We're not aware we're doing this. We're just doing it. It's always happening to me. Why is it always happening to me? And I have this issue and I have that issue. Self-compassion, on the other hand, is accepting that this is going on in my life. It is what it is. I'm accepting that this is the situation. And then you recognize that it's not happening to just you. Like I said, it's happening to everybody else. Self-pity is this only and always happens to me. This is my nasib in life. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. You've also recognized the situation, but now with self-pity, you are choosing. Sometimes people who are doing self-pity actually become aware of that situation, but will not accept it. So there's two different angles here. You can become aware of the situation and just fight and say, no, you know what, this always happens to me. It never happens to my friend. Look at her life. She's got the perfect life. But this is constantly happening to me. That is self-pity. Self-compassion, on the other hand, it releases you from the shackles of self-pity. It releases you from going over that story over and over and over again. It releases you from being depressed. It makes you unstuck from that situation. And this is where you start to take your power back and you say, okay, you know what? I am in this situation. I'm going to move forward. That's the difference between self-pity and self-compassion. Now, how do mindfulness and self-compassion come together? If you remember, the description of mindfulness was to be in the present moment with no judgment and with a lot of self-compassion. So when we are mindful, we're actually bringing in this component of self-compassion into our lives, and then we're able to live with less resistance towards ourselves and what is going on. So think about it just for a moment. When we're not self-compassion, when we're not showing ourselves that kindness, there's the constant resistance. So this is the situation, but I'm never going to accept it. And yet, because I haven't accepted it, the situation is not going away. So I'm consistently resisting it. There's a saying out there that says, what you resist persists. It will stay there, which is why you get stuck and you wonder, you start to see the whole world is against me. Why is the whole world against me? It's because I'm not accepting this. I'm not willing to accept this. Now, life is going to always be challenging. We will always have obstacles. Losing my father was probably one of the biggest obstacles of my life. It was the biggest fear of my life. That doesn't mean I'm not going to get other challenges and obstacles. I know I'm going to get challenges and obstacles. But what I've learned to do is how to work with that and learn how to accept that and not resist that. I've learned how to bring in that self-compassion practice into my life. And I'm going to just be kind about this to myself because it is what it is. This is what life is about. So why should I beat myself over it when I can take the other road and say, you know what, I'm just going to be kind to myself. Another thing, self-criticism and self-compassion. How does it feel when we criticize ourselves? We've talked about it. So maybe again, we can drop in our chat. How does it feel when we criticize ourselves? So earlier I asked you, what do we say to ourselves? Now, say all those things to yourselves that you go through and just drop into the chat. How does that make you feel when that voice in your head says, you're not good enough? How does it make you feel?
Sad.
Sad, it makes me feel sad, yes. What else? Yeah, feeling sad. What else? Think of a scenario in your life. Maybe you have something that's going on now. Maybe you had something that you've resolved. I feel judgmental.
Low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem. So what does low self-esteem make you feel like? Horrible, not enough, not worthy. Okay, yes. What else? We've all suffered periods of our lives when we felt low self-esteem. And how does that make us feel? Do we want to come out in public and talk to people and find that happiness and joy? Probably not. Unworthy?
Yeah, depressed.
Depressed. And what does depression do to you?
Make you down.
Brings you down. And what does that do to you and your family and the people around you?
You become lonely. You can't connect with the world.
Yes. There's loneliness, negativity. You can't connect with the world. That's huge, because when you let that voice take over, the self-criticism voice take over, it starts to not just affect you as an individual, it starts to affect the way you respond or react to the people around you. Think of self-criticism, that voice in your head, like the bear. So you're constantly poking the bear, right? You're constantly poking the bear. And what does that do? It feels threatened. And when the bear feels threatened, your whole body's threat defense system is activated, which means when we are in that state of mind, we get triggered very fast. When we get triggered very fast, we are reactionary. We don't respond, we react to a situation, which means that we feel threatened, which means that our automatic response is stress, not just of the mind, but of the body. And this is where chronic stress actually comes in. And this all started with a voice in our head telling us that we are unworthy. That self-critic telling us that we are not good enough. So when we're constantly putting ourselves down, it leads to a state of depression, it leads to a state of imbalance, and it leads to a place where we find ourselves stuck. Yet, the whole world, most human beings operate from a place of self-criticism. This is what baffles me. But with my research, I have understood. Why is it? Because it's easier. It's a defense mechanism. We want to shield ourselves because we don't want to hurt ourselves. Instead, we would rather listen to that voice and know, okay, that thing is telling me I'm unworthy, and it will keep me in a place where I can be unworthy, and I know and I'm comfortable in this place. But if that voice tells me that I'm worth it, it means I might have to get out of my comfort zone and go out and do something else that might make me worth it. But that place is fearful. I'm too scared to get out to do something else. This is where the battle continues. And this is why self-critic becomes higher than self-compassion. Now, whatever voices are in your head, turn those around. How does it feel when we are more compassionate with ourselves? So again, I want you to bring up that scenario in your head and ask yourself, you know what? This voice told me today that I didn't make a good meal and that I'm a horrible cook. Now I want you to turn that around. What can you tell yourself instead? And once you've turned that around, how does that make you feel? Let's drop it in the chat, or if somebody wants to say, you can talk. Yeah, Peruben?
It will make me happy.
I will Feel happier. Yes.
I can
Yes,
do
very
better.
You can do, yeah, you can deal with things better. Munira says, I've done my best already. Yes, I want to hear a bit more from a few more people.
So are you gonna say that I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm gonna do better? So this is the best I could do, and
I
be
love
gentle
that.
with yourself.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I am learning. This is the best I could do right now. I will maybe you didn't have all the information, or maybe you had all the information and you were distracted. I am learning, and this is the best I could do right now. It happens sometimes. Yes. And now that you've brought in this aspect of self-compassion in your life, this voice that you've turned around, how does that make you feel? Somebody said it makes me feel happier, calmer, peaceful maybe? You see, self-compassion is linked to our mammalian care system, where we feel safe, where we feel that we are cared for, just the way we would care for a child. Self-compassion actually down-regulates this threat system that I talked about because it deactivates it. So think of a stressful situation. You have all these critics, you have all these things that are going on in your head, but the moment you bring because when you feel threatened, your physical body, your whole physiology changes. Instead of being wide and open, you suddenly close yourself. Your pupils, they become large. You start to, your saliva production stops. Your heart rate starts to beat even faster. Your whole body actually gets affected when you are in that state of mind. But the moment you bring self-compassion as an ingredient into that state, you suddenly deactivate that state and you release love hormones. Literally, our mind has the power to do that. Your love hormones, known as oxytocin and endorphins, are released into the body, and that reduces stress, that reduces anxiety, and instead it increases feelings of security and safety. That is all done just by reframing from I'm not good enough, from there to a place of, you know what, you did your best, try again next time. Maybe you need to learn more. I'm constantly growing. Just that shift will change everything on how you feel and how you think about yourself. Okay? So now we have something known as the yin and yang of self-compassion. So when I talk about self-compassion, I might have, painted a picture of a soft cushion and, you having to cuddle the soft cushion. That's not what I mean. Because maybe not everybody has this soft cushion available where they're like, oh, I'm going to be just compassionate to myself. What you can do is find a place of yin and yang of self-compassion. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to describe to you what that means. Yin means when you're being with yourself in a caring way. In a caring way. I want you to participate and tell me, what do you think this means to you? What does being caring mean to you? Let's see, let me just check the chat. Ramzan, that's a very interesting comment. I like that. Yeah. We say it before somebody else because we're going to assume, we make assumptions that people will criticize us. So very, very interesting comment. Being gentle, being caring with ourselves is being gentle. Yeah, yeah. Perul Ben?
Being a friendly person.
Being a friendly person to ourselves. Yes, yes. What else?
Not criticizing our mistakes.
Yeah, yeah.
As
So
we're
when we're
still learning.
ourselves, yes, because we're still learning. Exactly, exactly. So the yin of being with ourselves in a caring way is about comforting ourselves. And we comfort ourselves by supporting our emotional needs. We soothe ourselves. It's about soothing ourselves, where we help ourselves to feel physically calm. Okay? And it's about validating ourselves, where we understand that what we are going through, we understand what we are going through, and saying it to us in a much kinder and tender way. So that's what the yin means, where we are being with ourselves. We're being comforted, whatever it is that brings us comfort. So whatever it is that supports our emotional needs, whatever it is that helps soothe us. So whatever that helps to feel physically calm. For example, for me, what soothes me physically is literally going outside and walking bare feet on the grass, or even going outside and hugging a tree. I'm a tree hugger, just FYI. That act makes me feel so much better. And for me, when I hug a tree or when I'm outside, it's making me connect to the planet. And I feel like, you know what? The planet is there for me. We call this planet Mother Earth, right? So for me, that is a very soothing way of showing myself self-compassion. When I validate myself, I understand that this is what I'm going through, and it's okay for me to go through. And a lot of you had put that in the chat. It's okay. You know, these things happen. Allowing ourselves that. The yang aspect of self-compassion is, how do we act out in the world? Normally, we protect ourselves. We can protect ourselves because we want to feel safe from harm. So how do we do that? Again, remember, this is self-compassion, right? Set boundaries and say no to what doesn't feel right. We don't know how to say no. And when we keep on saying yes, and suddenly we can't show up because we said yes, we beat ourselves up that, you know what? I wish I hadn't said yes, but if I had said no, then this person would have thought that, you know, they would have stopped relying on me. And suddenly all these stories start all over again. Again, remember, those are stories in your head. That's that self-critical voice in your head that's coming up, that's telling you, no, you have to do this, you have to do that. So if you want to protect yourself, set boundaries and say no to whatever doesn't feel right. The yang way of showing yourself self-compassion is by providing ourselves with what we need. So we recognize this need, accept that we deserve this need, and then go get it, whatever it is. Whatever it is that you need to provide to yourself in that moment of time that will show self-compassion, accept that, you know what, I need this and I'm going to go get it. For me, sometimes it's a piece of chocolate. Just adding a little bit of humor here, okay? And then we motivate ourselves, just the way a coach would motivate us. I'm sure a lot of you have had teachers or coaches. Now imagine if your teacher and coach told you, there's something wrong with you, you shouldn't be doing this, and you're terrible at this, and you will never succeed. Oh my goodness. I can see people going, oh no. Right? And yet, we do it to ourselves. So one way of showing up for ourselves is to look at that teacher who's kind to us, to look at that teacher who understands that we are stuck and we're struggling, and to look at that teacher who is supporting us. The same way, we must motivate ourselves. We accept, bring in kindness, understanding, and support. And I'll give you another example over here. This is a story about Bill. Bill had a trainer at the gym who was his age and who was being completely supportive of Bill. So for example, when Bill collapsed in the middle of a workout, the trainer would say, great, you're working to the point of muscle exhaustion, that's what we want, and that's okay. So now when Bill is lifting weights that could have injured him, his coach told him, hey Bill, let's save that one for later, we'll get there sooner than you think. Now Bill decided to apply the same attitude to his new business project. So he says, just give it a try, he told himself. I know you can do it. This is the attitude that he brought in from the trainer into his new business project. Because what he did was he imagined what his trainer would say when a setback occurred. He would say things like, hang in there, brother, we've got this. And that's what we need to be telling ourselves. And in that way, Bill slowly began to discover his compassionate voice versus the self-critical voice, and learned how to support rather than sabotage himself. Please remember that word, sabotage. That self-critic is what sabotages us. That self-critic is what keeps us stuck. This is why we are unable to move forward, because we are consistently self-sabotaging ourselves. Eventually, what Bill did, he quit his company job, found the venture capital that he needed to start his new project, and started living the life he wanted to live, the one that made him happy. It's all about what happens in our minds. Now, I mentioned earlier, life will be hard. You'll have tragedies, you'll have loss, worry, heartbreak, hardships, everything. This is just the journey of what life is. My note to you is that pain, because all of this will bring you pain. There's no life without pain. If there's life without pain, you're probably underground, okay? There is no life without pain. But pain happens in the moment. Pain is what is happening in the moment. Suffering is the added pain to the first one. Suffering is the added pain that we hold on to because we get frustrated because things aren't the way they should be. Going back to the example I shared with you earlier, pain is what I felt when I found out that my dad had left me, had gone from this world. 1 year was the suffering that I held on to because I held on to that pain. He's not around, he should have been around. Things are not the way they should be because he should be here with me and his granddaughter. He waited his whole life. How dare he leave me so early? That was causing my suffering. Okay? Mindfulness and self-compassion, the combination of these two, allow us to meet difficult experiences without resistance. Think of mindfulness and self-compassion like a big hug that's coming to you in a distressing situation. So right now, if you put yourself in a distressing situation, think of it as a massive, massive hug from the universe. This is what mindfulness and self-compassion is about. What does it start with? It starts with acceptance. Once we can accept, the pain will eventually start to fade away because we are accepting the reality that this is what it is. We are accepting that the reality that we as individuals are also not perfect, that we will make mistakes. We are accepting the reality that there will be struggles and that we are not alone. When we start to accept that reality, this contributes to our heart getting softer. Because when we are criticizing ourselves, our heart is just in pain the whole time. But when we start to accept, bring in the practice of self-compassion, we are now allowing our heart to do what it's meant to be doing. And that is bringing in that love and that softness. Somebody said gentleness earlier. We're welcoming that into ourselves. Okay? Now, how do we practice self-compassion? These are the things that you do. Ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? So again, when you find yourself in a situation, and these are practical examples that I want you to go away with. I like to do my presentations with something that you will take away as an audience. So if you forget all the other slides that I've shown you until now, this is the one you will take away home with you. When you find yourself in a situation that is distressing, where you are stressed, where you are hearing that inner critic, ask yourself in that moment, what do I need now that will help me? What is it that I need now? Even if you don't have the answer, that's okay. The whole point is that you are giving yourself a moment of self-compassion because by saying, what do I need now? Whose needs are you putting first? It's not the need of that person who has told me I'm not good enough. It's not the need of that person who says I haven't met deadlines. When I ask myself, what do I need now? I'm putting my needs first. Even if I don't have the answers, that's okay. Needs come first, and that is already one step towards self-compassion. The next thing you can do, another exercise you can do when you feel uncomfortable. Sometimes we take this discomfort from a situation, we take it just before bed and we sit and we're mulling over it. So here's another exercise that you can do. Write yourself a letter. Write a letter and say, "Dear Alima, this is how I feel." So I'll give you a breakdown of what you can do. The moment you start writing, the moment you start with "Dear Alima," already you're being compassionate. You will now put it down on paper with a caring voice. The first time you do this, it might be a little bit weird for some of you, because especially if you have never written yourself a letter, you can try and do it this way. I'll give you a few tips. Think of a friend who is kind and loving, and write a letter to yourself from the perspective of that friend. So, "Dear Alima, what you have gone through in the last few weeks has been difficult." This is coming from the perspective of a friend. So if this is going to help you write that letter, write it down from that angle. The next thing you can try and do is write the letter as if you are writing to a friend who is going through the struggles that you were going through. So let's say if you're suffering a moment where, again, I'll just maybe use an example of the rejection at the workplace, and you're being completely self-critical. Pull yourself out of that situation and pretend that, what my friend is going through, what is it that I would tell her? And write it down from that perspective. You wouldn't tell your friend you're not good enough. All of you did that exercise earlier. You would tell your friend, "You know what? Maybe this job wasn't meant for you. Maybe you just didn't have the right skills. Maybe you can just keep learning and apply something more. There's something bigger out there for you." Write all this down. The next way you can write a letter to yourself is write a letter from the compassionate part of yourself to the part who is suffering. This last part is the one that's the most difficult, where there's two aspects of you. There's the compassionate part, and there is the part that is suffering. And it's hard to find that compassionate part when you are suffering. So I would suggest, if you're going to do this for the first time, use the first two examples. The first one was, write a letter to yourself as if a friend is telling you from a perspective of a friend, or write a letter to yourself as if you're writing to a friend who's going through the struggle. Then you can read the letter later. Once you've written the letter, fold it, read it later, and see what happens. The next thing you can do to practice self-compassion is to forgive yourself. And I know, again, in the chat, somebody had written, forgive yourself. We must learn how to forgive ourselves. How much do we hold on to the past when someone has hurt us? Somebody hurt us in high school. Somebody hurt us 20 years ago. Guess what? They have probably moved on. We are holding on. So who are we hurting? Are we hurting them by holding on to that? No, we're hurting ourselves. And when we're hurting ourselves, where is the compassion in that? The moment we forgive ourselves, we've welcomed that compassion. The moment we forgive ourselves for being 50 and not having achieved everything we're doing, and maybe, it's like, okay, I'm 50 years old now, and I haven't done anything. What have I to show off? What have I to show for? You're beating yourself up. Forgive yourself. Put it down as, I had to go through this journey to get to where I am. And you know what? I have learned so much, and now I can do something about it. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to learn to let that go. Another way to practice self-compassion is expressing gratitude. Now, I want to get everybody involved again and think about the one thing that you are complaining about right now, and I want you to change that and find the gratitude in it. It could be the weather, although I think on your side of the world, the weather is probably shifting into much nicer. Maybe the Canadians, it's still winter. Maybe here in Kenya, we're going from super hot to cold now, so maybe people are complaining about that. I don't know. Think of one thing you're complaining about, and right now, I want you to shift that into a place of gratitude. So I want to see some of the stuff in the chat. There's a question here which we'll cover towards the end. Nothing is permanent, everything is just temporary. Yes, nothing is permanent, absolutely. So come on, I want to see people on how to reframe Your thoughts from whatever it is that you're complaining right now. Write it down. I'm complaining about the weather, but you know what? I'm going to turn it around. I'll give you an example, okay? Whilst all of you are thinking about yours, I'll give you my own example. It's been beautiful in Kenya. I'm sorry, Canadians and people who've been going through winter. It's been absolutely gorgeous here. We've had like mid 20 degrees. I am a very summer person. I don't like the cold. And suddenly it literally shifted overnight where the mornings are freezing and it has started raining and pouring. And for me, the first thing that came into my mind was, oh my God, where did the sun go? This was so beautiful. What is this rain doing? And then I caught myself. Because and the reason I was complaining about the rain was because a lot of the work that I do, I actually physically go into the forest and coach clients in the forest. So we walk and we talk, or we sit in the forest and we talk. So for me, the rain was like, oh, this is going to come in the way of my work. Now, what did I do? I changed things around. I said, you know what? The rain is important. The rain is important because our crops have been suffering. The farmers have been suffering. We needed this rain. So I have turned that around. Now somebody says, I lost my full-time job and I'm so grateful because I found my passion. Look at that. There is your shift. When you lose a full-time job, that can be very difficult because you have no salary. But she has found something else that she's more passionate about. It's beautiful in Calgary, cloudy but warm for April weather. There you go. It's cloudy, but it's warm. So I'm going to be grateful for that. Good. So I want you to start practicing gratitude on a more consistent basis. Let's see. It's been raining, cold, and freezing. I can't go out and enjoy the outdoors. However, I appreciate that I can spend time with my family indoors, quality time with the kids, and also the weather is good for the farmers. There you go. It is literally a shift in perspective. So I want you to start to practice gratitude on a consistent basis because it's about reframing your thought from a place of lack, there's no sunshine, to a place of acceptance. It's okay that there's no sunshine, but there is rain instead. Okay? The last one is something that is known as the self-compassion pause. And we're going to do this exercise right now, actually, so that in the next time you find yourself in a situation and you don't have your journal to write your gratitude, you have forgiven yourself with everything that you've done, you don't have the time to write a letter to yourself, you are going to practice the self-compassion pause. And I'm going to teach you how to do this right now. So what you're going to do is I want you to bring in mind an experience. You can even close your eyes for this if you want. Okay? This technique that I'm going to teach you now is very good for when you're encountering day-to-day stress or discomfort. Bring to mind something that is giving you a little bit of stress and discomfort. So close your eyes and just imagine that moment just for a couple of seconds. And the first thing I want you to do is to just pause. If the story was about to start in your mind, pause. And take special notice about your breath. What is it that you're feeling? Notice what it is that you're feeling. The next step I want you to do is use the power of touch. So you're going to take your hand and you're going to place it on your chest, on your heart. Or if you want, you can just give yourself a hug. And remind yourself, this is a difficult moment for me. I am experiencing suffering, but suffering is a part of life. So I accept myself just the way I am. You can use words like, I'm feeling safe. There is happiness, peace. I feel strong. There's a place of strength within me. I feel protected. Use this language. The self-compassion pause doesn't have to be a 5-minute exercise. You can literally do it in under 1 minute. The power of touch is huge. We've all experienced the lack of touch in the last 2 years with COVID. We were not allowed to touch. Human beings are social animals. We like to greet each other with high fives and hugs and handshakes. We were cut off from that for 2 years. But we weren't cut off from giving ourselves a hug. We weren't cut off from using the power of touch on ourselves. And when you take your hand and put it in your heart, you are already bringing in a power of love to yourself. When you put your arms out and bring them around and hug yourself, and literally even, bring your head down and just really squeeze yourself, you're already showing self-compassion. How are you going to deal with this? How are you going to deal with the situation? You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay, Alima. That's it. That's your self-compassion pause. And I want all of you to take this with you and to practice this. Whenever you find yourself in a stressful situation, practice the self-compassion pause. If you need to write it down and put it somewhere that you can see, do it. Use visual cues to remind you. A lot of the times what happens is people forget to practice the gratitude because they're in the middle of the stress. It's like the last thing I can think about is to be grateful. Put it in front of you so that when you are feeling this experience of stress and anxiety, there's a note in front of you that says self-compassion. And then you're like, oh yeah, Alima reminded me, this webinar I did 3 months ago, she said, I need to be grateful. Or she said self-compassion pause. And that will change things for you immediately. Okay? And that's pretty much it on my part.
Thank you so much.
Open to questions and answers. You're welcome.
Thank you, Alima. Thank you so much. And we will take some questions. If anyone's got any questions at all, if they can put it in the chat, I will read it out to Alima and she will hopefully answer your questions.
I love the last comment from Abbas. The power of touch works. I use it with my youngest one. Can feel the love when I cuddle her. There you go. There you go. The power of touch is huge. So yes. And now that COVID is a little less, I think we're able to hug a few more people.
It always works, doesn't it, Alima?
It does, right?
Alima, I would like to ask that, I did meditation and stuff like positive self-affirmation things, part of philosophy for 18 years. And then I had a conflict with somebody and I threw it out. So when I hear of new ideas and new schools of thoughts, then I say to myself that I know these things. Yes, I know that I'm not practicing what I used to, like I used to before. So just wondering, if NLP will help me, because that's that would be, is that like positive affirmations in meditation?
So NLP is a modality completely actually separate from meditation. NLP is neuro-linguistics programming. It stands for neuro-linguistics programming, which is pretty much reprogramming the mind's language. So the example I gave earlier was about let's use the self-critic example, which is what we've been talking about. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. That's keep going. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. NLP, one of the techniques of NLP is reframing that. So when you reframe that, instead of saying I'm not good enough, you've just turned it around and said, you know what? This didn't work out for me. I'll try better next time. So NLP is a completely different modality. Meditation is also completely separate. So if meditation is something that you have been practicing, mindfulness actually is about, there's a lot of meditation practices when it comes to mindfulness. And what you would have to do is allow yourself, first of all, ask yourself, what is it that caused you to stop this practice? NLP may assist you with solving a trauma. Maybe something happened to you that has created a subconscious trauma that made you decide, because the language that we tell ourselves is all about decisions. We make decisions where we decide we're not good enough. We make decisions that limits us, and those become limiting decisions, where we tell ourselves, I can't go to that place because it's too far, or I can't do this because of XYZ. These are decisions that we make subconsciously. So what NLP will help do is maybe it will help find out what made you stop, because you made a decision to stop practicing. You decided, I'm going to stop practicing. So NLP will go back and say, okay, what made you stop that? And it will help you release that and come back to maybe what it is that you were enjoying. Does that answer you, Harish?
Yeah, thank you. So, part of NLP would be like a positive affirmation, yes? And then the next step is addressing the trauma.
Yes, so addressing the trauma is definitely part of NLP. Positive affirmation, I would put it as, as more of a mindfulness exercise. And positive affirmations as well, when you are doing a positive affirmations, you have to believe in it. When you're writing, I am an awesome person, or I am beautiful, or I believe in myself, I can do this. When you're reading it, you have to activate all your senses to actually feel it, hear it in your head. And as you're watching it, maybe even have a smile and you actually believe in this. So positive, sometimes people tell me, but positive affirmations don't really work for me. Well, ask yourself, how are you doing this positive affirmation? Do you believe what you're writing? I like to do these things when I'm in like the forest, for example. The outdoors for me is a place that I call home. So when I'm out in the outdoors, those positive affirmations, it's like this, the light of fire in me. I'm out there, I'm walking or I'm climbing, and I'm telling myself, I can do anything, and I believe it in that moment in time. Does that help you? Great.
Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Harish. Thanks a lot for that. Any other questions?
Just a pleasure to listen to you, Alima.
My pleasure. It's been such a pleasure to present this. This is a topic that's very close to my heart.
Totally. More power to you. Love you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Alima, I have been reading quite a bit around the topic self-compassion, and I actually follow Dr. Christine Neff, who you may
Christine
have
Neff, yes.
Excellent writer, and I've read quite a lot of her work. Would you recommend any other books for our listeners, viewers?
I can't think of one on top of my head, but I really, because you brought up Christine Neff, if people do want to look into it, she's a good place to start. She is actually the right place to start because she's also the pioneer of self-compassion. So she's done a lot of work in self-compassion. And there's also MSC, the Mindfulness Self-Compassion Center. So if you Google that, you'll be able to see a lot of work that they're doing. And I think they also have quite a number of books under their portfolio. What we're doing here in Kenya is I'm a part of this group of, I think there's 7 of us, and we're pretty much on a mission to bring self-compassion to the continent. So, on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, we sit together and we talk about it, and we're like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. So it's a project that's underway, but wherever you are, you don't need to wait and, for that to come to you. Take it. You already have the knowledge to start. And the moment you start to show kindness to yourself, that is going to come outside and it's going to start spreading to the people around you. And then they're going to take it and start spreading it to the people around them. It suddenly has a ripple effect. Sorry, I've just gone off the topic of recommending books, but this is what happens when I start to talk about self-compassion.
Alima, I can feel the passion, how passionate you are about the subject. We've got a question over here. Is any sort of physical activity like walking or cycling, etc., give more inner support or help in overcoming self-help?
Absolutely, physical activity is, it's a good time for you to actually fall into the present moment. So the next time you're out cycling, for example, Notice the movement of your feet on the pedals. Notice how the wind blows on your face. Notice the tension in, on your hands as you're holding the handles. If you're walking, do the same thing. When we're walking, especially when we're walking with a friend, we're constantly, in conversation. We don't stop to look around. We don't feel your feet in your shoe. Feel your toes in your feet and how you're walking. Slow it down a little bit and take one step at a time. Take one step in front, and see what, and notice. And every time you do that, you're falling into a place of presence. You're falling into the now. I'm sure most of you have heard of The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And when you are in that moment of now, this is where you decide what you want to do with life. When you are in the moment, in the present moment, this is where you can decide, you know what? I am tired of being unhappy. I'm just going to decide to be happy right now. And you make that decision, and that walk suddenly doesn't become about the problems that you were talking about and the job that you lost. That walk suddenly becomes, oh, wow, look at that butterfly. Oh, wow. And yes, that helps you with whatever it is that you're fighting inside with.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Jatish, for that question as well. Okay. There aren't any other questions. Just to let everyone know that this has been recorded and it will go on my YouTube channel in a couple of days, 2-3 days time. If anyone wants the link to my YouTube channel, please send me your WhatsApp telephone number or private on chat privately, and I will add you to my database, to my mailing list, and I'll send you the link as well.
Halima, are you based in Kenya?
I am based in Kenya, yes.
Your phone number is British or Kenyan?
No, it's Kenyan. It's Kenyan.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for your help.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Right, it's 6:10. There aren't any other questions, so Alima, I'm going to wrap it over here with a big thank you to you. I know it's 8:10 now, isn't it?
It is 8:10, yes.
Yes. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And
My pleasure.
we'll catch up very soon, and we'll try and do another topic as well very soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just to let everybody know, my contact details are there. If anybody does want to reach out to me privately, by all means, please do so. Just let me know who you are and that you were on this webinar and, you have a question. If it doesn't, if you don't have one right now. Yes, I think somebody, Parulben.
Yeah. As I found your webinar interesting, can I forward you the link to my friends about it?
Yes, of
Of course you can.
Thank you, Elima, for sharing your knowledge and skills. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naina.
It helped me a lot because at the moment I'm really feeling down.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Umesh, sir, did you get my?
I did. I got your, and I've just made a note. I'll send you the link, Anila.
Thank you so much, Umesh. And thank you so much for sharing the knowledge and good tips. We all needed it right now with this COVID and other stuff that we are going through. It was very, very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.